We'll call the meeting to order.
Welcome to Nixa City Hall. This video is going to provide you with an overview of how the City of Nixa conducts City Council meetings. We encourage everyone to attend and participate in City Council meetings. This is part of how democracy works at the local level, listening to the perspectives of subject matter experts, city residents, and other community members helps our elected leaders make more informed decisions. Before we start the meeting, let's review some of Council's rules of order. These rules help us make sure our meetings are orderly and efficient, while protecting the ability of everyone to have an opportunity to speak. Please be respectful of the person speaking and hold your own comments until it is your turn to speak. Presenters are invited by the Council to provide information during the meeting to the Council. These are informational presentations only, and nothing will be voted on at the time of the presentation. Presenters are not time limited. There are 2 times when all other visitors will be able to speak to Council. The first is during the visitors section of the agenda, and the second is during any public hearing regarding an agenda item. During the visitors section, anyone may speak to Council about any topic, whereas the public hearings regarding specific agenda items allow you to make comments for Council to consider before they make a decision on that topic. Whether you wish to speak during any public hearing or the visitors section, the following rules of order will apply. 1. Only one person should speak at a time. Be respectful of the person speaking and wait to speak until it is your turn. 2. Anyone speaking must do so from the podium and speak into the microphone. 3. You must first state your name and provide your address in writing to the city clerk before beginning your comments. 4. All speakers will be given 5 minutes to make their comments to the Council. The mayor or council may have additional questions for speakers after this 5-minute period. 5. All comments should be addressed to the mayor and council. 6. If you have questions about existing city processes, programs, or policies, or if you need assistance from staff on any issue, please contact City Hall during normal business hours and we'll be happy to assist you or answer any questions you may have at that time. The public hearing is designed to provide the public an opportunity to provide testimony and information to the mayor and council regarding the decisions they may be considering. Keep in mind this meeting will be recorded and live streamed with video and audio. Therefore, all comments relevant to this meeting must be spoken into a microphone, otherwise video viewers will not be able to hear you. In the case of a closed session or technical difficulties, some meetings or portions of meetings may not actually be recorded or streamed. The use of cell phones during council meetings is discouraged, so please silence all devices now. Thank you for watching, and thank you for engaging with the City of Nixa. The meeting will begin shortly.
Here.
Sean Lucas.
Here.
Jared Giddens.
Here.
Aaron Peterson.
Here.
Darlene Graham. Matt Ogden.
Here.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll move on to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to remove any items from tonight's consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to approve.
So made. Second.
Roll call, please.
Are you giving that second to Aaron?
Aaron.
Sean Lucas.
Yes.
Jared Giddens.
Yes.
Aaron Peterson.
Yes.
Matt Ogden.
Yes.
Seth Baylor.
Yes.
All right, move on to our service awards. We have 2 service awards this evening. Our first is for Autumn Manning, 15 years in the finance department. Jennifer.
Autumn has been with the City of Nixa since November of 2007. She has been responsible for several functions within the finance department over the years, but currently she handles all of the cash management. She does all the bank deposits, the credit card reconciliations, accounts receivable, and all of the cell phone administration for the city. She's a diligent worker who is very good at paying attention to detail, a trait that is extremely important in the finance department. She has interactions with most other city departments and gets along with everyone. She always has a smile on her face and is friendly and funny. I am proud to have Autumn on our team, and I congratulate her on her 15 years of service.
Congratulations, Autumn. All right, and our second one is Ari Jahala. It says meter reader, but I don't think that can't be right?
Yes, it is. It is. So Brian Hawk is Ari's supervisor, and he's not here tonight, but he did write a little write-up, so I'm going to read it for you. Ari recently transitioned to the utility billing department about 6 months ago from the parks department, where he worked for 9.5 years as maintenance technician. During that tenure, he has been rewarded with the Employee of the Year in 2021 for his hard work and dedication to the city. Since Ari has been with utilities, his work ethic and attention to detail has proven that accolade to his peers and administration. His new position as meter reader has challenged him in new ways, and he now has a different interaction with the public as previous work with the Parks Department. These new interactions are helping Ari grow into a more rounded employee, and I could not be prouder to be a supervisor. These are Brian Hawk's words. Ari is a hard worker that is well respected by his peers, and he holds himself to the highest standards of professionalism in the office and in the community. Thank you, Ari, for your service, and we look forward to what the future holds for you. And since he did work for 9.5 years in the Parks Department, I think Matt has some things to say as well.
We love Ari. Yeah. I can just stop there, right? No. It sounds like Brian's nailed it pretty quick. Ari's a very hard worker, a very good hand to have within the city. So we were very disappointed to lose Ari at the Parks Department, but it is a great thing that he's stuck on with the city in another capacity. Know that he'll be a great hand in that capacity, and so we're just excited that Ari's still here, although not with the Parks Department.
Well, congratulations, Ari. Do our photo ops. Here, boss, come. And thank you both for all of your service. All right, we'll move on to our visitor section.
So Karen, you're going to talk under the charter, right? Okay, Ron Sanders.
Good evening. My name is Ron Sanders, and I live here in Nixa. I'm privileged to come up here and talk to you guys every couple of weeks. And I do consider it an honor to come up here with some ideas every once in a while. You know, it takes a lot of moral courage to do a lot of things in society right now. And even going back hundreds of years, people had to find a lot of moral courage to do a lot of things. Start off with freedom of speech. To truly have freedom of speech, it takes a lot of moral courage to stand up and say, I completely disagree with that person over there, and they can call me any name that they want, but I support their freedom to speak. Whenever it comes to the freedom of expression, I may not agree with some of the paintings. I think that there was a cross that was set in a jar of urine, very repugnant to me as a Christian. But in this country, I would vehemently defend their right to that freedom of expression, no matter how repugnant it is to me. It takes a lot of moral courage to say that, but it takes a lot of moral courage for that person to do that completely repugnant thing and say, I have the freedom to express myself as well. We have the freedom to carry our weapons. We have the freedom to defend ourselves. It takes a lot of moral courage to stand in the face of fear and defend yourself with any type of weapon. If anybody's ever had to take a weapon and defend themselves from an aggressor, you know what I mean. Anybody who's never had to do that, congratulations, you're a part of probably about 60 or 70% of the people in the United States that'll probably go on for the rest of their days never having confronted anything like that. To know what kind of moral courage you have within yourself, sometimes that's where you end up finding it. You have to have the moral courage to stand up for the Fourth Amendment, where you can defend your right to not be seized by illegitimate power of government. Sometimes there are errant people in government who will use government power to do bad things to people, or just do wrong things to people, not knowing that they're doing things wrong as well. But it takes a very strong person to stand up to that authority of government, whether it's a policeman or whether it's the FBI or whatever, and say, I'm sorry, but you can't come here and you can't ask me anything because I've done nothing wrong. It takes a lot of moral courage to stand up to the big guys and say, leave, get out of my face. It takes a lot of moral courage to come in here and sit at this dais and look at your jobs as one of the most important things, protecting the citizens, okay, from things that may go wrong. It takes a lot of moral courage to say no to things that should not be happening in the community. And it takes a lot of moral courage to find what's right and have those difficult conversations as well. And every once in a while, you have to say no to things that you want because they're wrong, because they're not the job of the government, because they're not the job of me as a city council member, or it's not my place as somebody that works in the government. It takes a lot of moral courage to admit when you're wrong, and it takes a lot of moral courage to stand up and say, I'm sorry, I did something wrong. That moral courage has been tested over the past 2 years with very much gusto. And many of us have had to face that moral courage, have had to stand up with that moral courage in ourselves to say, well, wait a second. Right now, just as an example, ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are treatments for COVID, but they weren't 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, and many doctors had lost their licenses. How many people stood up and said, wait a second, this doesn't make sense? And how many people died because they didn't have the moral courage to do that? That's the kind of moral courage that I'm talking about tonight, and I hope everybody understands my message. It's kind of ambiguous, but we all need moral courage to find our way and do the right thing. So I hope that you guys find the moral courage to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Anybody else? Nope. All right, we will move on from the visitor section. I didn't skip anything this time. I tried to do better on
You haven't skipped
my
anything yet.
agenda. All right, I'll move on to the first reading of ordinances.
First reading, Council Bill Number 2022-116, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending Chapter 2, Article 4 of the Nixa City Code by adding thereto a new section to provide how use tax funds shall be utilized.
I don't know who's going to talk on this one.
Yeah, I'll take that, Mayor.
Okay.
council and the mayor has directed staff to come back with an ordinance that would propose moving the part of the use tax to transportation. Currently, our sales tax that we collect at 1.5%, 1% general fund, 0.5% goes strictly to transportation. The discussion is whether or not council would like to take the use tax and take that 0.5 cent from that use tax and move it over to fund transportation, which would mirror our current sales tax of 1.5%. Again, if we were to do that, staff's concern obviously is future funding moving forward, because that would take about, based off of last year's numbers for 2021, we're still finishing up this year, so we'll see where we are at the end of the month, at the end of December. But using last year's numbers, of course, that would remove about $220,000 from the general and move it over to the streets. Again, staff's here obviously to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
Why do we want to do that? Why do we want to do that?
Well, I think Mr. Woodman said that, there's no legal obligation for us to. The use tax is just an open use tax. But as we saw in Ozark with their tax proposal, they had asked for the use tax for a litany of specific reasons the last time for public safety. Again, it failed. We're lucky that we got it passed here. But I think people, when they voted for it originally, assumed that the money would go to where the other sales tax that have been passed by the people would have gone. So in this case, this is saying that we're going to do is the use tax is just the way that we collect. It's just a technical way we collect the sales tax that the people voted on originally. And so the people voted on a 1 cent general sales tax and a 0.5 cent transportation sales tax. And in my mind, we should assign the use tax to those same areas where the original tax that it's derived from was voted on. Does that make sense?
What will this do to our percent, the percent of revenue?
So the budget that's proposed, that was in your packet, includes this transfer, and it's about $272,000 out of general into transportation, and it makes that percentage 101, I think, 0.39%.
The other thing is, we're kind of artificially inflating the amount of money that we have in the general fund. When we saw, you see people comment a lot on, we need more sidewalks, we definitely need more streets, trails, those types of things which are funded out of the transportation funding. And we don't have any other money except for federal matching money that goes into that. So we don't have, other fees or anything else that goes in there. We don't have revenue like we get from the Parks Department. The only way we get that money is through that sales tax, and then we use that money as matching elements for grants that we receive. So we kind of limit ourselves to a certain point that we have to make those 20% matches. If we can only make those, if we can increase that money by $250,000, then we can get another $800,000 in matching funds when we match that against that for federal or state projects.
But when this tax was voted on and passed, was it designated to be split up that way?
It was not.
Would there be any reason, and maybe this is more of a Nick question, I don't know, or either one of you. If we got to a point where, say, we had an opportunity to do a split on a sidewalk, that even with this just in the general fund, we wouldn't be able to use it for that? Or we could use it for that, correct?
No.
Yep. Yeah, if it's in general fund, you can use it for any municipal purpose. If it's in a special revenue fund, then you have to use it for the source that it's mandated by statute to use it for.
Okay. Just the 101% is kind of scary.
It is.
I'd rather it not be over 100%.
Well, I would too. But yeah, I don't think there's, I mean, it's $200,000 or $250,000, whatever it is, yep. So, I mean.
70.
It'd be
Based
about
on the amount we're
270.
budgeting for the
270.
use tax for '23, it's 272, I believe.
Yep. So you definitely don't have to agree with me. That's just, that, I think we've had this discussion, for a while, and Doug's, had this discussion with Doug and Jimmy for a while, that's probably the way it should have been originally.
Yeah.
But we just never did that, and then COVID and everything else, and so it's just one of those things that kind of artificially inflates the amount of money we have. So when we go and ask the public and say, hey, we don't have enough money to pay for our police, we don't have enough money to pay for our parks, well, we have this other use tax money, well, really, we should be spending that on sidewalks and streets, which is another thing that people want. So this is a way to dedicate that money, make sure that it goes there, instead of, if it's left over, transferring it to the streets department to do specific sidewalk projects.
I do think it's something that needs to be done, but I'm not necessarily sold on it being done now. I think one thing that would be interesting to see, because I asked Mr. Lyles a question of, in years past, do we have any way of knowing exactly what we've spent that money on? But since it's been pulled together with everything else, it's hard to identify, yeah, we were able to use it on this project and this one and this one. Would there be, a way to do that going forward, maybe for the next couple years, to see, where we do need it the most, and then we can say, yeah, this half cent went specifically to this. Is that a financial accounting nightmare, or is it?
No, I mean, it could probably be done. It would be best if you want to do it that way, to sort of budget it that way.
Yes.
Budget a project or whatever you're going to propose to use it for that purpose.
Yeah, you could designate it for something else instead of the 2/3, 1/3 split, like is in this. You could designate it to be just for police. Say we're going to use all of our use tax, because that number is going to increase as well. It's increasing much more rapidly than our regular sales tax, especially with the Wayfair legislation coming through next year. It's probably going to increase a little bit more for a certain period of time.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
think it's probably going to start to level out right now. I think we saw a pretty big jump year over year, but I think we're going to start to see that sort of plateau.
So then you could do that. You could say, hey, yeah, we're going to dedicate all of this funding to the police, or all of this funding to the parks, or, currently it would be a little more than the current parks budget probably, the transfer, but it'd be pretty close.
Yep. And that would be a discussion we'd have every year during budget time, and we could, in essence, kind of earmark that money for a specific project or purpose.
Honestly, I don't.
But we could definitely do that.
Honestly, I don't see why we need to do an ordinance to designate that for this currently. I mean, if something we can reallocate or designate at different times of budgeting. I mean, if it's general fund money, then, I mean, let's use it for the general fund.
All right, any other questions?
Could it be used in other areas besides transportation?
If you assign it specifically to transportation, no. If you don't, then it's in the general fund, it can be assigned, as Mr. Woodman said, to anything.
I was just curious because on our sales tax bill, we could maybe put some to police and some to parks.
Well, right now, it goes
what's
to the general fund, which is
Well, I know,
divided
but-
between parks and
I know, but
streets.
you're talking about taking that and specifying it for something.
Mhm.
Just a thought.
Yep. Yeah. So you could use, like we've been using the ARP, ARP, not
ARPA fund, ARPA.
the ARPA funds.
Sign up to
No, I'm over that age, so I signed up already. But we could do it like we do the ARPA funds and put it in its own line and then transfer it out to wherever we wanted it to go and use it that way as well. I think that, but yeah, I think as Mr. Giddens was saying, that, it gives a little more clarity to where the money goes if we specifically designate it to go certain places. You get a lot of comments, people saying, you got all this use tax money, so splitting it out so that it's easily identifiable of what we have it for and what we've been spending it on is probably a good goal as well. Okay, no more questions. We'll open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this very technocratic item. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? We don't have a way just to take things off. We used to be able to vote no on it the first time, but we don't do that anymore.
If
Can we
you-
table
If
it,
you don't
or-
want to take it forward for a second reading, someone could move to postpone it indefinitely, which kills the bill.
Someone like to make a motion to postpone indefinitely?
I'll make a motion to postpone it.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll drop that one, move on to the next thing.
First reading, Council Bill number 2022-117, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa adopting the 2023 operating and capital budget for the city.
Okay, well, in light of what just happened, we'll have to make some changes because that does include that transfer, so need a little direction on how you want me just to put that all back, and then you decide how you want to use it, or, because it's included in there, so just before we leave, give me some direction on how you would like to proceed with that. Here's just a little recap of what's gone on since the last time we met. Again, we have an 8.7% COLA and a 1.5% merit raise in the 2023 budget. The insurance benefit rates remain unchanged from 2022. Loggers rates are increasing 0.8% for police and 0.2% for the general. And then we have 2 additional personnel, one in Public Works, an administrative clerk, and one in water, an assistant water quality superintendent. So that's kind of the big picture of the personnel recap. In operations, since my report to you on November 14th, as I was going through each line, I came across a couple of things where some lines had been deleted out of the admin budget for some reason. But those approximately totaled $8,000 to put those back in. We also came across some things in the water fund that we needed to add back in. We had some carryover expenses that are not going to be paid for in this year that need to be carried over into '23. One of those being $130,000 for the water master plan and hydrology study. And the $120,000 in the water fund for the additional truck that we had budgeted for this year. It's not going to be coming in until next year, and we forgot to roll that forward. So those 2 things were added to the water budget. So in recap, here are the capital projects that are included in the 2023 budget for the general fund. This is not the streets or the enterprise funds, but just the general fund. And you can see we've listed them out and then their funding source, because we can't afford to do everything out of the budgeted revenues, so we're taking some of these monies out of dedicated funds, savings accounts, and reserve accounts. So I'll let you just look that over one last time. If there are any recommendations for any changes to this, this would be the time that I think that we should discuss.
Anyone have any changes they would like to make? One thing I think we had discussed was possibility of removing or putting the firing range building on, what do we call that thing? We haven't talked about it this year.
What's that? I'm
Putting
sorry.
it on hold.
Oh,
Or putting
like
it on
contingent?
contingent.
There you
Yes,
go.
Contingent,
Yep.
that's the word I was looking for. So that'd be one possibility.
Yep, Mayor and Council, obviously, these are CIPs that were elected to be put in after discussions with council. Obviously, with our current financial situation moving forward, they are things for discussion and things that we are concerned about, although that, again, we need these things. We have to continue to make improvements but there are, some concerns, obviously, about bringing our reserve amounts too low or our savings a little too low. So just something for discussion, but obviously we will follow whatever direction that council would like us to proceed in. But I will just make a comment. I think we went over this already, but the impact fees are separate than our normal general revenue. It's the fee, well, although it's part of the big bucket, it's actually specified for the parks and police. So those projects are going to be paid specifically out of those impact fees.
Okay.
Go ahead and move on.
No changes in debt since the report that was given on the 14th. Talked about the added transfer out of the general fund to the streets. That I'm going to switch back. So in conclusion, the general fund ending unrestricted cash balance is $823,336, which you can raise by about $272,000. And that percentage will go down. I think it was about 98% before that. The chart that you see is just sort of a 5-year look back of unrestricted cash balance. The blue bars are unrestricted cash balance, and the red line is the operations as percentage of revenue. And really what you'd like to see is the opposite. You'd like to see those blue bars going up and the red line going down as time goes on, which means your cash balances are getting higher and that percentage is getting lower. We're kind of in an opposite situation right there. But these are our budgets for the past 5 years and how that trend line is going. So this is the general fund. In the street fund, the ending cash balance is $1,128,79. Again, subtract about $272,000 off of that. And operations as a percentage of revenue is 36.9%. Of course, in streets, the major expense in that fund is capital. So that's not it. That's why that percentage is so low. In the electric fund, the ending unrestricted cash balance is $10,636,548. And operations as a percentage of revenue is 87.3%. And in the water fund, the ending unrestricted cash balance is $1,332,339 with operations as a percentage of revenue of 93.01%. And in the wastewater fund, ending unrestricted cash balance, $1,994,651, and operations as a percentage of revenue, 61.94%. Any questions?
Any questions? So can you add the use tax as a line like the ARPA line that we're transferring out of and then just transfer 100% of that? We can just say it's for police or?
Well, I
That
can
would cover the full amount.
add an expense line as transfer out of use tax, and you can designate whatever money, however much you want that to be, and then tell us where you'd like it to be transferred into. So yeah, that's not a problem at all. It is its own revenue line. Use tax is
Right.
its own revenue line, but it
Just
all
gets
comes
combined in
together.
and all the other stuff. and all
Right,
the
so
other
you would just have to
documents.
designate an amount, say a third of that we want to be a transfer out of general into wherever you want it to go. Or out of admin, the admin department, into if you wanted to go to police or parks. We can do it that way.
Pay half the firing range.
Yeah.
Firing range building.
Well, so yeah, that's another thing I was thinking when you're going through that is we could designate that specifically for capital expenses if you wanted to, and then we could say we're paying for the firing range with that, we're paying for pretty much all the things. Can you go back a couple slides to the capital expenditure slide?
I think this is the one.
Yeah. We didn't sum up but yeah, you could do pretty much everything that's in the budgeted reserves, I think would be covered.
Budgeted revenues?
Yeah, budget revenues.
Well, the firing range is $375,000.
Yeah. And the use tax numbers,
Oh, the full use
seven,
tax?
seven something, right?
Okay, I thought you meant just the half-cent portion. You're
No.
talking about the whole use tax?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's already included in that, isn't it? Isn't? the
Yeah,
other
it's already
1%
included. It's already included. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, trying to make it more transparent one way or the other.
Right.
And Doug and I was just actually talking, and Jennifer, you can weigh on this as well. If we do that, that should change the percentage heavily because we're looking at operations versus revenues, but then we're going to move that to a capital, correct?
Well, if you're going to designate specific revenue for a capital purpose, then we would subtract that revenue out of the revenue portion of the calculation for the percentage.
Right.
So that would drastically change that percentage, just so you're aware.
Can you figure that up real quick?
Yeah, just like
I
that.
do have my
She
stuff.
just has to change a couple numbers.
Okay. We won't ask, we'll just switch it back to the way it was for now, and then
Okay.
we'll think about this some more. All right, any other questions? And we'll open up a public hearing. Anyone like to speak on this item?
It's like that first slide was inviting me to come up here and say something. My name is Ron Sanders. I live here in Nixa. $125,000 bucket or a police department firing range.
The $125,000 butt is out of the aquatic reserves, so we've saved money for the last 20 years to replace parts of the park and parts of the community center and parts of the aquatic center so that they can keep functioning. They make profit, so we take part of that profit and put it into a special fund for that.
Okay. A bucket for $125,000 or firing range for the police station or for the police that not every town around here would be able to use, well, that would be able to make their own, but would probably pay to come use ours instead of driving up to Springfield to use theirs. A range would actually be offset by the use of the range from other fire or other police departments. And it's an essential government process. It's an essential government function. A bucket in the park is not really. I mean, yeah, it might make us some money, but then again, I'm pretty sure everybody's going to go and swim and do stuff there, even if it was taken out for another year or two, while we got a functional, while we built a functional firing range for our police force, and got it stood up, had it stood up for surrounding communities to also use it as well, and kind of bring some of that money away from Springfield and back to our growing city. I don't know, it's just an idea, but I don't know if anybody else caught that, but it's kind of crazy.
As I said, those reserves are specifically set to repair things at the parks. So we couldn't spend them on that. They're specifically earmarked for that purpose. And like I said, we make a profit off of the pool, and so the pool, we put a little bit of that back each year in order to repair it and repair the community center, so that we can continue to allow those to operate correctly. We also have already completed the range, or near completing the range, Chief? Near completing the range. So we already have the range. This is an additional training facility at the range, which is, again, a great thing to purchase, thing we definitely need. But again, it's kind of, you're putting two false truths together. You're putting a formal fallacy together that just because this thing is true and this thing is true, the third thing is true, but it's not the case. One is earmarked for one thing and one is earmarked for the other. We'll leave the public hearing open. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? So we've decided to switch everything back to the way it was before the first ordinance and have that come back as the final one. Correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the second reading.
Second reading Council Bill number 2022-111, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa calling an election to be held on April 4th, 2023, to submit to the qualified voters of the city several proposed amendments to the city charter, authorizing the city clerk to do all things necessary and convenient to submit the proposed amendments to the qualified voters of the city, and providing for the enactment of said amendments if approved.
He's doing this one. Make Mark come up
Mayor
out of the
Council, I'm
audience and
still-
do it if you want to.
I was still looking at the last conversation and making some notes, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, as the Home Rule Charter Review Commission presented during the last council meeting, they did make the three propositions that are listed out in the memo there for consideration to put on the April ballot. So again, it would be Proposition 1, Proposition 2, and Proposition 3. Again, we'd obviously be more than happy to discuss any of those three that you would like to, as well as I know there's several members from the Home Rule Charter Review Commission here tonight, if you have any additional questions for them as well.
Does anyone have any specific questions? No? All right. So we'll open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak on the Home Rule Charter.
Hello, my name is Karen Keever. I live in District 3 here in Nixa. I currently serve on the Charter Review Committee. I also served on the original Charter Committee in 2009. I am the no vote on Proposition 3, and I'd like the council to understand why. There has been 15 recall petitions filed in 9 cities since our charter was enacted 12 years ago. 4 did not go to vote. 4 couldn't obtain enough signatures, including Kansas City, which requires 20% of vote cast. In fact, if you average the votes for the last 5 years, 10% of qualified voters is more than turned out to vote anyone into office. 10% of votes cast was a gift from the original charter committee to the residents of Nixa, and the residents should not give it up. Changing 10.3 to percentage of qualified voters without lowering the percentage penalizes the residents of Nixa and disenfranchises those that do actually vote. The intent of the original charter committee was to put control of our local government in the hands of locals by only requiring 10% of votes cast to recall. It was intentional, not an oversight. There is no party affiliation in the municipal level, and you don't find out someone doesn't share your values or your political beliefs until they're already in office. Voter turnout for municipal elections has been historically low. Simply removing someone from office is not the measure of a successful recall. Recalls are a tool for control of local governance, as seen with the recalls that got enough signatures but didn't go to vote, and those that resigned when faced with recall. For those reasons, it's in the best interest of the residents of Nixa to vote no on Proposition 3. But there is statutory language in 10.3C that must be removed from the charter, and if residents vote no, that language will remain. I have stated from the beginning that I was open to changing it to percentage of qualified voters with a lower percentage. I didn't go home and rethink things. I went home to gather more data, which I'm now supplying with you with as well. In the form of governance voted on by the people of Nixa, the power rests in the council, including the power to investigate, and that is why our mayor has no vote on the council. We have what is referred to as a council administrative form of government, also known as weak mayor government. The mayor executes the will of the council. There's no such thing as mayoral orders or mayoral emergency powers under our chosen form of charter. Chapter 8 of the current city code is in direct conflict with our charter. Not only does it violate the charter, it violates Missouri statute. Chapter 8 appears to give the mayor and his or her office powers it does not have under our chosen form of government. Chapter 8 is Chapter 24 of the old code and was repealed by RSMO 190.335 and the 2009 911 vote prior to the enactment of the charter. It doesn't belong in the city code. RSMO 190.335 created a county emergency management board. Taking old code, renaming it, and repurposing it is illegal. It's criminal. It was never voted into law by the council of the people of Nixa. Chapter 8 put the mayor between a rock and a hard place and must be removed from the city code to protect residents and future mayors. The mayor's recall was forced by a lack of clear access to redress in the charter, which Proposition 1 corrects, and removing the unlawful Chapter 8 will prevent it from happening again in the future. City personnel bear some responsibility for the recall by accepting and entering mayoral orders in direct violation of our charter. The acceptance and publication of mayoral orders sanctioned and provided the appearance of legitimacy to illegitimate orders. Those that voted to enact the charter 12 years ago know the mayor doesn't have the power or authority to enter orders which tore the community apart. The city's media influence far exceeds that of the average citizen, and the disinformation inadvertently disseminated by city employees and officials played a direct role in the failure to recall the mayor. The residents of Nixa should not be penalized for this. Although the recall did not succeed, more people showed up to recall the mayor than showed up to vote him into office. If Proposition 3 does not pass, we are still left with language that must be removed. The ordinance to place this on the ballot must be entered by January 13th. There is still time to reconsider. Therefore, it's in the best interest of the residents for the council to acknowledge the violation of our charter by removing Chapter 8 and referring this matter back to the Charter Committee for further consideration on including a minimum signature requirement in lieu of percentage of qualified voters, and to also consider the mayor's suggestion to limit recalls to April election.
Any questions, Ms. Cuba? Thank you, Karen. Appreciate that. We will leave the public hearing open.
Hello, my name is Ron Sanders. I'm a resident here of Nixa. Sorry about that. A while back, I got to tell everybody about the sword of Damocles and how the king, whose cousin came and said, hey, you lived a wonderful lifestyle, and I just, wonder why I can't live like that also. And the king said, hey, you can. You can live it up for a day. I'll let you live it up for a day. And the king took a sword, a razor-sharp sword, and he took a piece of horsehair, and he hung that sword right above the king's throne so that his cousin could sit on the throne and feel the power of being the king for a day. And he had a great time until he finally looked up and he saw the sword and realized what it meant. And that was the sword of Damocles that, kept him in check, because anybody could come up and cut the string and take him out. Well, the part of the story that people don't usually pay attention to is, one, the sword was never over the king before his cousin took the spot. And two, the king, the story about this particular king, the king was a tyrant, and he treated people very poorly, which is why he knew that he could never hang that sword of Damocles over his own throne. I mentioned moral courage a little bit earlier. One of the biggest parts of moral courage is holding yourself accountable. And this right here is allowing that sword of Damocles to stand over every single one of these council member chairs and the mayor's chair at 10% of votes cast instead of 10% of voters in your district. Because I'll tell you what, it's very hard to be an elected official and only step on 50 or 60 toes. But if this passes, y'all are golden, like I said at the last meeting. Every city council member here will be able to step on between 400 and 600 toes before you're in any danger of people rallying to take you out of your seat. That's a very high bar. And the mayor, he don't have to worry about it until he steps on between 14 and 1,800 people's toes. That's quite a high bar. And what that invites the people who know how to use illegitimate power to come in, pretend like something that they're not, win elections, and then once they take the seat, start stepping on people's toes. Right up until that point, till they get to that 400 or 500 toes, and then they just say, okay. That's a couple of whole city blocks. That's a couple of whole, neighborhoods. That's like 2 or 3 whole HOAs that you could totally decimate, totally mistreat before you finally feel the wrath of the people coming together. Now, I would encourage you to find that moral courage and hang that sword over each one of these chairs like they are right now. Leave them there. And if you're a good city council member, nobody's going to come up here and recall you. You're not going to find people here in Nixa that are willing to do that. Because the people here, I think, are some of the best people in the state. They have a good, strong moral compass. They understand right and wrong. They will speak up whenever they see things not going right. And they will let you know what's right and what's wrong. And also, they will give you compassion whenever they know that you were stuck between a rock and a hard place. Thank you.
And we'll leave open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilor. Well, my name is Mark Hartsock. I am the current chairman for the Home Rule Charter Commission. I live here in Nixa. It's been my honor to lead these meetings and do our best to scrutinize every aspect of this charter and things that needed to be looked at, both from when we became a Home Rule Charter as well as when we had a review. As we spoke in the last meeting, it's only required every 10 years, but if we see a need or we see a reason as a community, we come together and we take that opportunity, and that's exactly what we did. I wanted to stand up tonight and address a few of the comments because I think it's very easy to have some misunderstandings of the goal behind these propositions, and I want to address that real quick to you. And first is Proposition 1, where we talk about Section 3.7. So while it's easy to have a little bit of misdirection tonight and maybe even a little bit of misinformation on how we're taking away power from the public, 3.7 actually gives more power to the public through the council. Your voice, our representation inside these walls. And by adding the ability for any elected official to be forfeited, that's an important aspect. The goal is if somebody is doing something wrong, that can be handled internally through the voice of the people, from the people that we elect, without ever having to get to a recall, right? So that's something that's worthwhile to mention. We're giving more voice to the public through our elected officials, and in fact making it so that all offices, including the mayor, can be forfeited. So that's an important one. When we talk about 10.3 and we talk about the constitutional language referring to making it easier to file these petitions, making it so that you don't have to be a qualified voter or even citizen of Nixa to be out handing out these petitions, we are in fact giving it more power to the people again. We're making it easier for the people of Nixa to petition and get those signatures and get someone on your side. We don't have to upset 400 people of a district, as some are saying. It only takes one voice, one activist, one frustrated individual to lead a campaign. And in the world we live in today, with social media and the ability to hire solicitors for petitions, there are many ways that it's easier today than it was 12 years ago. So by considering a 10% of qualified voters as opposed to 10% of votes cast is a responsible thing to do for our community. The goal is not to get petitions successful. The goal is to have a successful recall if it's needed. Can you all agree? Why have a recall if we're not going to have a successful recall? If we can't get 10% of the voting populace behind that concept, we are dragging our city through the mud, and we are taking a lot of efforts towards a recall election that could potentially be frivolous. So I don't think anybody here would argue that, that there could be a need for a recall. We know that. We agree with that. 10% is in line with the absolute lowest qualifications of any other charter city in our area, with the exception of a few that do have the ability to have a votes cast, and those are much higher percentages, right? So, and that was one of the discussions, by the way. When we did have a holdout, when we did have a 1 versus 8 vote to do it the other way, that particular vote was in favor of a much higher percentage of votes cast, and it's very important to remember that. I'll be the first to say I'm against that wholeheartedly, because as you see, when we have hotly contested topics like we just did with sales tax, we had over 8,000 people show up to vote. That is going to continue to happen. If you have a hotly contested topic like a recall or concern about whether or not a candidate is qualified, you're going to have a significant higher number of voters turn out. And if you pick 25% or 30% of votes cast, you now get into the reality of a possibly unattainable petition. So 10% is a fixed number. When we talk about maybe it's safer to put a fixed number there, 10% is a fixed number. So thank you very much. If there's any other questions while I'm up here, I'm happy to entertain them.
Any other questions, Mr. Hartsock? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Have a great night.
We'll leave open the public hearing. And we will close the public hearing. Any further questions or discussion?
Mayor, Council, just real quick before, it has nothing to do with the vote, but I wanted to make sure I said thank you before we
Oh,
moved on to the
definitely.
next topic. The Home Rule Charter Review Commission did a fantastic job, and they really did take that very serious, and I do appreciate that, as I know staff, the rest of staff and council and the mayor does as well. They dedicated their time, and it was quite a bit of time that they had to dedicate. So I just wanted to say again, thank you for all the work that you all did.
And back to Ms. Keever's comments, that is exactly why I asked to have her appointed to the committee, so that she could make those voices. She's a longtime resident. She has, done a lot of great things in this community, and I knew she disagreed with that particular point, and I wanted that conversation to be had by the committee, and I believe it was. I don't have to agree with her. Mr. Lyles doesn't agree with her. Mr. Woodman doesn't agree with her. Council Attorney General didn't agree with her. Many other people haven't agreed with her. But I think it's kind of the opposite from what Mr. Sanders had said, is that what you're really allowing, as Mark was saying, 80% of the people came and voted against the recall. But if you would have had 700 signatures, you could have gotten 1,400 or 1,500 people to come out and vote for the recall, which would have been a much bigger thing. But instead, we allowed 70 or 80 people to sow that divisiveness in the community, and Mark was saying, drag us through the mud for 70 or 80 people. Where again, if you would have had that much higher threshold, you could have done it. And like Mark said this too, is if something happens, it's going to be easy to get 700 signatures if I, committed a crime, did something immoral or illegal. That would have been a very easy thing to do. But in this particular case, it wasn't. So. Any other comments? She did have a point about the separating the percentage from the part that is like the part you said was legislatively required. Can we split the two into two separate things and let people vote on them separately?
The way the charter is drafted and the way the state constitution is drafted on this, once the charter commission's proposed amendments to the council, you have to put it on the ballot. Now, there's time, if you want to send it back to the commission, to still meet the deadline to get this on the ballot, which wouldn't create any kind of liability or anything on behalf of the city, if that's something you wanted them to look at. But the way the charter is written, it's once they make their decision, the council's obligation is to put it on the ballot.
Mr. Hartsock. Do you think that's something you and your commission would be interested in doing and separating? Because one is, like I said, one is kind of legislatively required and the other is more of a choice.
So there may be some good news on this. We did a little bit of research on this, and Mr. Woodman may want to address it specifically. While one is more of a choice and the other is more of a constitutional terminology, I believe that regardless of whether or not Proposition 10.3 amendment passes, I believe that the portion that is unconstitutionally written as proposed would likely become a default change. I don't think it is necessary for someone to vote on something that is considered unconstitutional, if that's free.
We can't make it constitutional by voting yes or no one way or the other, right? Okay.
That's basically in a nutshell.
Okay.
So, and I think that if we add a second proposal for just that one topic, we potentially open ourselves up to say, if you don't agree with us on this, but you like this part, it wouldn't be great to always have a plan B in everything we do, but I don't think that's how the ballot's intended to be written.
Okay.
So, if that makes sense.
Yep. Thank
So,
you, Mr.
yeah,
Hudson.
to answer your question, I don't believe there's a reason to change it. I think if for some reason the majority votes against the amendment change, the unconstitutional portion will have to
Just
be
ignore that
corrected
portion
regardless.
anyway.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hartson.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or discussion? All right. I'll take a motion to approve.
So made.
Roll call, please.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Matt Ogden,
Yes.
Seth Baylog,
Yes.
Sean Lucas.
Yes.
And move on to the next one.
Second reading Council Bill number 2022-112, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa renewing the base lease agreements for real estate and existing facilities with the Bank of New York Mellon Trust Company, N.A. for refunding certificates of participation series 2013.
As you recall, we do this ordinance every year. This is just to renew the base lease on our debt serviced for the Northwest Sewer Lift Station. This debt matures in June of 2025, and the outstanding amount at the end of this year will be $290,000. We have included the principal and interest payment in the 2023 budget at $122,000.
Any questions? We can't not pay it. We can't pay it off. So that's pretty
Well, I did look up, the next one is one you asked about.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
I'll wait.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Any other questions? All right. We'll open the public hearing and close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Matt Ogden,
Yes.
Seth Baylog,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Jared Giddens.
Yes.
Second read Council Bill number 2022-113, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa renewing the lease for facilities financed through the Public Building Corporation of Nixa, Missouri.
This is the one that is the Public Building Corporation that financed the police station and the city hall upgrades. And the mayor was asking if we can pay this off early. I did look at the offering statement, and we can pay early on or after August 1st of 2023 in whole at any time or in part at any interest pay date, which is 2 times a year, in February or August. So yes, we can pay it off early after August 1st of 2023. That would be the call date, or prior to the call date. But this one matures in August of 2026. The outstanding debt on it at the end of this year is $1,065,000, and the principal and interest payment is included in the 2023 budget at $286,950.
Any questions? Thank you, Jennifer. And we will open up the public hearing on this one. And close the public hearing. Any further questions or discussion? Motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
That way somewhere. Roll call, please.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Matt Ogden,
Yes.
Seth Baylog,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson.
Yes.
Second reading Council Bill number 2022-114, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa rezoning the real property generally located at 300 block of South Market Street from single-family residential R1 district to a high-density multifamily R3 residential district.
Mayor, Council, good evening. I got some late-breaking development for this topic. So after the last City Council meeting, staff reached out to the applicant to discuss the concerns that the surrounding neighbors had for stormwater and other issues that they had. In that conversation with the applicant, he determined it best to resubmit for a different zoning classification. That would be for R4 zoning, which was commonly used for single-family attached, which would be a patio home or a duplex, which the residents of that area did state would be a better fit for the area. So the applicant has, as of this morning, resubmitted for that. So staff is recommending that you remand this back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, where it will be read at the December 5th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
I move to do that.
We should all do that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what we should do.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like that.
Take a motion to remand back to planning and zoning?
That's what I just moved.
Okay.
Second.
And second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Scott.
Do you need us to have a public hearing on that?
No.
Okay.
Because it'll come back as the other thing. 'cause
Okay.
It'll come back as the next an ordinance again to rezone it anyway. Go ahead.
Second reading Council Bill number 2022-115, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending Chapter 117, Article 4, Section 117-99 by removing self-storage land uses as permitted from commercial districts.
Thank you. So currently, we have an administrative delay in place for all applications for self-storage land uses. That's set to expire December 31st of this year. We've had a couple of different discussions with council on this issue. Staff found it best to propose to remove self-storage land uses from our commercial zonings, which would be highway commercial, general commercial, and neighborhood commercial, and then continue to allow them in industrial zoned districts. Sorry, I got mesmerized for a second. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that was held earlier this month, Steve O spoke about his potential land sale that he has. Again, that was similar to the conversation he had at the last city council meeting. Planning and Zoning Commission, with all things considered, unanimously opposed this code change and does not recommend approval. One commissioner specifically spoke about, he believed that the self-storage land uses was already properly zoned and should be allowed in commercial zoning, and then another voiced concerns about potentially interrupting commercial developments and what that might do to the city's image. So staff does recommend approval of this code amendment. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Any questions? Thank you, Scott. And we'll have a public hearing. Mr. Oaf's on vacation, he couldn't make it today, but I did speak with him earlier. And we'll close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
I was just going to make a note that at the last council meeting, someone from CGW got up and spoke and said that they did a survey with some residents, didn't provide any of those. Scott and I have, and Aaron has it as well, an email from back in June of residents that were not happy about the proposal of that happening. So I think there's some conflicting stories on that.
I've talked to residents too who live in Tiffany Highlands and said they were never contacted.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of that, but so.
All right, so get out your pens. So I have, there's kind of four ways I can see this going. So you can vote no, which would be, as planning and zoning said, we're limiting public property uses. We don't want, it goes along with what planning and zoning said. It would allow storage units in commercial things and would allow Mr. Oaf to move forward, commercial zoning districts. You could vote no, but you could say we would accept this as part of the comprehensive plan, which we're currently working on RFQ for, so that we could exclude it from specific corridors or specific, we could make it much more specific than just general zoning classes. I think that's really what planning and zoning was going for. That would allow anybody between now and the time the comprehensive plan is approved to submit plans, and then as long as they submit plans, I think Mr. Woodman said in the last meeting that they would at that point be grandfathered in if they've already, before we say no. We say no that we're not going to change this ordinance. We're going to leave it the way it is for now, but we assume that in the comprehensive plan it will be limited, and we will accept that at that point in time. So that lets there be a free-for-all run on people putting in permits to.
Real quick on that point.
Sure.
The adoption of the comprehensive plan will not change the zoning ordinance. What that will do is tell us where these are more likely to be, and it should tell us where a lot of things are better situated. So there will have to be another ordinance that will come forward to change the city's zoning ordinance to comport with the comp plan. So it won't be as soon as the comprehensive plan is adopted. It'll be sometime after that. And it could take some time. It won't be an immediate thing because we'll have to I'll defer to Scott, but we'll have to redesign and redraft the table of approved uses and what's allowed where, and potentially have different zoning districts at that time.
Correct. 3 would be vote yes to approve the change, which was Scott was saying, but again, to have some sort of accommodation for Mr. Oaf and his client that he was already working with. I think I'll say these 2 things, and then I'll let Mr. Woodman and Mr. Lyles say why they can't be done. But we could say that we would accept a rezoning of this area to a light industrial usage, which would still be would allow it to be this one last thing to be a storage unit, based off what Mr. Oaf had said in the last meeting.
Totally confused.
Mr. Woodman is going to tell me why I can't do that now.
It's called spot zoning.
Spot zoning.
I mean, it could be. I would need to know, and this is something that the planning department would engage in if an application for such a zoning district was submitted, if it was compliant with the comp plan, the surrounding land uses, compatible with what's out, the facts on the ground now, then that's something that could be supported. Absent that, it would most likely be considered spot zoning.
Or the city, as I stated in the last meeting, the city could purchase the land from him. He said he'd sell it to us for $900,000, so we could
We said no.
utilize our economic development funds or part of that and purchase the land and do whatever we wanted to with it. Again, when we have people who come and say that they don't want to, the field in their backyard turned into a subdivision, those people alone exceed Mr. Sanders' 60 or 70 people threshold from the earlier conversation, but sometimes city council has to rule in favor of having your field in your backyard turned into a subdivision. So same thing here. We can put the money where our mouth is. We don't want we don't want a private developer to do this. We can take it out of their hands. Mr. Lyles will now say that we don't have the money to do that.
That's correct. I would
Correct. We don't have
advise
money.
we don't have the money to do that.
And then the last one would be, or option 4 would be to vote yes. You can just vote yes, believe this is the correct thing to do, protect these corridors. Mr. Oaf, too bad for Mr. Oaf, too bad for planning and zoning, which is I always, we have a couple members who were previously on planning and zoning before. I always question, why do we ask them for things if we're just not going to not do what they say anyway, or not take that into account? But that is our 4th option.
Okay.
So 1 no, 2 no but, 3 yes but we can't do either one of those 2 things, we're told, or 4 yes.
So no vote means that storage buildings could be built there where Mr. Oak wants to build them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then, Mayor and Council, one last comment. I also received a call from Mr. Oaf today. He just wanted me to reiterate to Council that, because he wasn't able to be here tonight, that he wanted to make sure Council knew that this was only on the east side of Tiffany. He wanted me to make sure you knew it did not go to the west side. I told him I would convey that message.
And I explained these ideas to him as well, and I think he was fine with 2 or 3, which if we give him $900,000, he's happy. If we let him build it at a different zoning, he'd be happy to bring the different zoning back as something for planning and zoning to review. So.
Has he submitted anything, permits, anything like that? I mean, are they wanting to move forward?
As of this time, nothing has been submitted to the city except for utility locate requests. That's all that's been asked of the city for this.
And just for clarification, Mr. Oaf, my understanding is it's a real estate issue at this point. So the actual developer is not Mr. Oaf, so therefore has not submitted any plans.
I just feel like allowing this one and nothing after that, since nothing has been submitted yet, wouldn't be necessarily the right thing to do.
Well, to be honest, I have a problem with this simply because the placement of it on the highway coming into Nixa, and because there's so many houses around that are very, very nice subdivisions who are opposed to this. And there's a lot of people that live in the subdivisions. You said you talked to him, you all talked to him, and I've talked to people, and they don't want something like that there coming into town. And that's where he wants to put it is a really I know we talked about putting a stoplight there, but that's a really dangerous stretch of road.
I think it's part of our job as we set up here is to look at what's best for the city. And if we listen to our people of the community, they always say we need commercial growth. I've never heard anyone say we need more storage units. If we want commercial growth, we have to leave our corridors open for that to happen. If we fill those up, we are saying goodbye to any commercial growth.
I think as Mr. Ope said last time, he's had that property open for 15 years and ready to develop, and this is the only opportunity that has come up to him.
There's many ways it could have been developed in 15 years, couldn't it?
Do what?
There's many ways it could have been developed in 15 years, couldn't it?
Yeah, sure.
$900,000, that'd be a part of the reason why it's so empty.
Any other questions or discussion? So I'll take a motion to approve. That'd be a vote of yes, so that'd be 3 or 4.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
And then we'll do a roll call.
Seth Baylor,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Matt Ogden.
Yes.
All right.
Resolution number 2022-115, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa amending the city's personnel code by repealing policy 7.1.8, which relates to pandemic sick leave.
Good evening. So yeah, this is a removal of a policy that we've had in place for almost 3 years. So in the 3 years since the pandemic has hit, the City of Nixa has gone above and beyond to take care of its employees when they got sick. But at this time, it has been almost 3 years, we do feel that we can retire this policy.
Any questions? Thank you, Amanda. And we'll open a public hearing. And close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So made. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That's all we had on the agenda for this evening. Anything else from staff?
I've got a little bit.
Oh,
sorry, Jimmy.
What?
Go ahead. Nope.
Just want to remind everybody that Friday night is the mayor's tree lighting ceremony. Begins at 6 o'clock at the X Center. The weather's looking beautiful. I think cloudy but 60 degree as a daytime high, cooling off in the evening. So it should be a great evening for an outdoor event. We've got live reindeer. Elsa's coming. Olaf's going to be there. Santa will be there. The Grinch. Activities, refreshments, lots of choirs and musical groups. So should be a great evening. And then Sunday is the annual Christmas parade. And so it begins at 2 o'clock from the X Center, heads down, I'm not going to give the whole route, but kind of goes down in front of the junior high, then around Rotary Park, and then back up into the back side of the junior high. And so that begins at 2 o'clock, and hope to see you there as well.
Going to be a fun weekend.
Big weekend.
Anything
And then
else?
I'll also mention that the Nixa Chamber of Commerce has announced their top 10 under 40, and they're going to be making an official announcement at the next chamber luncheon and recognize those awardees. The next chamber luncheon, if you'd like to attend, is December 13th at 11 a.m. We do have 2 of our own city employees, both from the police department, that will be recognized. Sergeant Josh Barton and Officer Jesse Brooks, both will be receiving that honor. So if you would like to attend that chamber lunch, just let us know and we'll make sure you have a ticket.
Anything else? Anything else from council?
I do. Do you?
Yeah.
You go first.
Okay. Just wanted to thank staff for doing an amazing Thanksgiving lunch for staff, especially the chefs of the day, Becca and Amanda. I don't know if she can hear me, but that was a really good time. A lot of people showed up. I thought it was nice to meet. There were some people that I had honestly never seen before, so it was nice to meet some of the other employees that I haven't
And we
met.
had some very, very positive comments from the employees, some emails and some direct comments. They really appreciated staff and council and the mayor as well for helping out with that.
We might need a bigger venue next year, though. It got a little warm in here.
Might need some more chefs next year.
I did the dishes.
Pointed right at you.
I did the dishes.
So actually, what I wanted to bring up, a couple weeks ago, I went to the downtown revitalization meeting, and there was a lot of talk towards the end of that meeting about the zoning for the downtown area and talking about that, and with the appointment of Scott now moving to Director of Planning and Zoning, they wanted to know more ideas, more of what was going on for the downtown area, more specifically kind of like what is our plans for like an overlay zoning area or something like that. So I did talk to Jimmy. I think you talked to Scott a little bit, so you might have a little information or feedback with us on this.
Yeah, so staff did engage with the Downtown Revitalization Committee probably earlier this year or late last year to kind of to hear out their concerns and what they were hoping to see happen downtown. And through that, staff reached out to Better Block to kind of see if there was a way to reimagine how people interact with the downtown environment. So we're hoping to get good feedback from their survey, which will then lead into the downtown master plan, which is currently budgeted for to happen in 2023, and we are working on the RFQ for that. So as soon as that budget takes effect, we can get those out and get that started. And then, based off how the downtown master plan goes, that will guide us through creating a downtown zoning district. So if that master plan advises us to be like super friendly for redevelopment or something, we'll have to craft our zoning district to match that. So it's kind of a domino effect on how we get to that zoning district, but it should be its standalone district that has a chance to expand over time.
Okay. Yeah, I think some of their biggest concerns were kind of dealing with setbacks and stuff like that. So if they had to tear down a building or something like that, they'd have to build it way back, and it wouldn't coincide with anything like that. So thank you for addressing that, and I hope to see you at some of those meetings soon.
All right, anything else? The only thing I had was assignment of liaisons. So for Matt and Seth, we have this program we call staff liaisons, where you are assigned staff or a couple members of staff to be kind of their sounding board. So if they have questions about what council might be interested in doing, or other ideas that they want, or if you have some ideas you want to discuss with them, you can do that in kind of a less formal manner. And so currently we have parks, and then we have, what do we call them, Cindy? Administration and men in communications. So would either one of you have a preference to which you would be assigned? Then we'll change again in April. Or that's what we've done.
I'm open to either.
Yeah.
Got one? Okay. We'll make Matt go with Matt. Makes sense.
Perfect.
And Seth can go with Cindy and Drew. Got the IT guy there to help you out, right? So they handle the IT portion, so that's probably a good assignment as well.
Perfect.
So we will go ahead and do that. I don't have anything else, so I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.